Coming in as one of the most unique companies that we're going to be having here at PDAC. We're here with CEO Tim Gallagher. You are the CEO of Royalties Inc. And we're not just talking about royalties in the mining industry, we're talking about a few other industries as well. My good man, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being here as well. Well, I'll start off by saying, as I said just a moment ago, this is a very unique approach to royalties. Can you talk about what your thesis is here, and not just about royalties in mining, but beyond as well?
Right. So our investment thesis for all investors is perhaps to say, think of royalties as an asset class, and you should allocate 10% to royalties because they're a de-risked model, the operating exposures, at the company level. So the point is there's far more categories than most people think of. There's obviously mining that's split into gold and copper and lithium, but there's oil and gas, there's drug royalties, there's renewable royalties. And then about 5 years ago, I saw BMI pays out a record $1 billion in music royalties. So that started this journey.
Yeah, well, let's stick with that as well, because obviously that's something that now this company is going to be doing a lot more in the music industry. Can you explain what brought you to that, but also what does that even look like?
Well, obviously there's a lot of background behind it, but the reality is the whole physical economy has been dwarfed by the creator and internet economy. Yeah. And so the secret sauce for this business is intellectual property in the form of copyright protection. So mine life, let's just say, is typically, say, 10 to 15 year mine life. And then when I learned that there's life of author plus 70-year global protection, from millions of pennies around the world 24/7 while we sleep, then it's a whole world that's been basically held privately by rights holders of this content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll move over here because I know this is starting to talk about what you're doing, moving over to the music royalties. Can you explain this slide?
Sure. In short, it's really showing the last 20 years of the transition from CDs in 2000. Napster shows up, messes up the whole business. And let's face it, in the main, the music industry has been high profile, but relatively small, 20 billion. It declines down into the middle there around 2014 to about 14 billion. Yeah. But slowly in the background, the iPod becomes the iPhone in 2007. Then you've got Netflix and Spotify getting created, which remarkably, they've been around for 15 years. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to say the average investor probably only signed up for Netflix or Spotify or Apple or TikTok in the last 5 years. So it's all these little royalties coming from the copyright fragmented ownership that's paid out by these performing rights organizations around the world. So, and that was the example I gave you with BMI paying out a record $1 billion in the US. There's 400 million paid out by SOCAN in Canada, and the US has several other ones, so it's more like 4 or 5 billion. But we know that there's in total probably 20 billion in music cash flows out there.
It's amazing. Now, are there other companies doing this? Can you, does this set you apart? Is this something that others are doing? Like, what's the uniqueness of this? But also, what do you plan on doing in the months and years to come with your company?
Well, in terms of the first question, let's just say, our role model from the beginning has been to be the Franco-Nevada of music royalties, right? So it was a very genius idea, over and above the mining operational business, 35 years ago. So no, there's no public music royalty play in North America. Particularly, there's a bunch of funds that are out there, private and public. There's a couple in the UK. There's bigger names you might have heard of if you saw, the Neil Young purchases or the Bruce Springsteens or those types of things. There's a demographic trend obviously going on because all of our heroes are turning 80, and who's going to buy these individually held royalties?
Yeah.
But there's definitely in my mind upwards of $100 billion in cash flow we didn't know about. Because I also think that there's just more of a guess, but there's another 20 billion in TV residuals, film royalties, book royalties, gaming royalties. So I think in practical terms, because we're trying to evaluate it as a 10 times multiple on long-term protected cash flow. So I think it's 100 billion times 10, and I think it's $1 trillion opportunity, but it's going to take it at least 10 years for people to become aware of it, to assemble it, because the challenge is most of these cash flows are small. They're held by individuals.
Yeah. Now, speaking of being held by individuals, or in this case, an entity, how much is your portfolio right now? What do you currently own? But more specifically, how do you look to expand that, and where?
Well, as I said, there's a whole demographic trend and a whole network. Not unlike every industry, like the mining. There's obviously thousands of people. Think of Los Angeles as a city driven by royalties, and think about the fact that we've got these Canadian superstars that have, created billions of dollars in revenue and made themselves wealthy out of our backyard, right? Justin Bieber, Drake, The Weeknd, Shawn Mendes, Daniel Caesar. Let alone all the old artists. So it's a huge entrepreneurial success story. Canadians punch above their weight, but it's not really the big, wealthy artists we're focused on. We're trying to democratize the ownership of these things at a better price. So let's just say, to get a piece of those hit songs, but from somebody that those superstars worked with, the songwriter, the producer, the drummer, and so on. So it's really just a network. There's song brokers. You can think about entertainment lawyers. But once you get exposed to the equivalent of this show in that industry, then you'll see it's infinite.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for investors who are looking to find out more information about your company, they're excited about what they heard, where can they search for you? I know you're going through a name change right now. Can you explain that process and where people can find out more about you?
Sure. So for the moment, we're halted as Xterra.ca, Xterra Inc., and symbol XAG. And so we've received conditional approval on the CSE for the name change and to move over with this new hybrid model of the two mining royalties that we have in Zacatecas for non-paying royalties. And then from the point of view of this company that's been around for 15 years, it's got its first revenue on a diversified basis from this portfolio. So it's now collecting monthly dividends from Music Royalties Inc. And the idea is to just grow from there in the same way that we grew Music Royalties privately.
Very interesting. Well, I appreciate so much your time for going all over this. And once again, for investors, this is something that's going to continue to grow. Stay tuned for the new website, new name with the Royalties Inc. And I appreciate your time coming here during PDAC as well.
Thanks very much.